develop a research project seeking to explore policy issues, but also legal issues, of course, related to pathways to permanent residency for migrant workers, and focusing on the following research questions. And I will be happy to share that with others if you want to send you the research questions on paper. So number one, for example, what factors lead migrant workers to seek permanent residence? What issues do they face in making the transition? Should there be additional pathways to permanent residency for lower-skilled migrant workers, and if so, on which criteria? Is there evidence that migrant workers who are not currently eligible for immigration would use the opportunity they had to? And what are the implications for settlement and integration of two-step migration processes? What processes, what should be the responsibilities of employers and communities in this regard? So these are very broad research questions, but my methodology actually was as follows. So I did interviews and focus groups with migrant workers, both skilled and lower skilled, in order, of course, to discuss their perspective on permanent residence, whether as a current or prospective option. Also, I did interviews with previous migrant workers who have become permanent residents, in order to obtain an in-depth understanding of their transition and integration experiences, including the programs that they use, other services that they found most helpful. And I did interview all other key players: civil servants, employers, union representatives, lawyers, etc., etc. So the project included participants in 3 provinces: Ontario, Alberta, and Manitoba. And field research was conducted between January and September 2014 and involved 100 research participants. So it was quite an intense research time. And so I have we have the breakdown of research participants is as follows. So we have 45 current migrant workers who were interviewed, 30 former migrant workers who were interviewed, so the one that who successfully accessed permanent residency, and we have 16 external stakeholders interviewed and 10 employers, which are big employers in each of their field, and others that are also small employers to get the perspective of two. So my two-day presentation will only focus on interview and focus group data involving migrant workers, and it will offer a very preliminary analysis of this data. It focuses on the following questions then. What factors lead migrant workers to seek permanent residence? What is the meaning of permanent residency for them? What obstacles do they face in making the transitions? And how are they overcome? So, this is very preliminary research findings, as I say, but here is my impression, if you want. The first point that I think is important to make from what comes from this research is that, and maybe maybe this will be a contentious issue to start with, but the migrant workers that I interviewed, not all of them actually arrived in Canada with a firm intention to stay. In other words, their decision to immigrate in using the temporary foreign worker program stream is not always made before their reaching the Canadian soil. And this varies a lot, I agree with you, according to the migrant's country of origin. For example, in the Philippines, for many of the Filipino migrant workers that I interviewed, there is a knowledge, right, about the opportunity to gain permanent residency through the labor migration programs. And so many of them told me it's like winning the lottery, right? When we get access to, when we get a work permit, we know that's our way to access to PR. But I had, for example, Chileans who work as housekeepers in Fort Mac, in Alberta, and you know, they really came up with different stories, and others as well. For example, a person from El Salvador working in Medellin and Manitoba told me I could come and I would work for a year and then I would go back. So those people sometimes came completely coincidentally through the labor migration program, and it can take long even for some before they eventually make their decision to immigrate. But once the decision to immigrate is there, once they are involved in the immigration process, then of course permanent residence means a lot for them, and of course for their family, as we will see in a few minutes. So true enough, the vast majority of migrant workers who arrive with a clear intention to stay and to apply for PR are lower skilled workers. Why is that so? Because for many of them, their work contract is perceived as a towards PR, permanent residency, and we know that. We know that this is because for most of them, two-step immigration through nominee programs is actually the only feasible option to immigrate to Canada. But conversely, we also met several skilled migrant workers, even those under the NAFTA program, for example, who had a clear intent to immigrate through the TFWP stream. So I mean, the interesting thing here is that we cannot only make the division between those who wanted to immigrate through the stream are the lower skilled, and the skilled ones who have no clear intention. For many of them, using the NAFTA program, for example, may be an opportunity at one point to get PR. So for example, this woman from Mexico working in Edmonton in a skilled position told me, well, the objective was to get foreign workers because my goal was to be for permanent residency. I was educated, I came here with the idea that I was going to start all over again, but I had the knowledge that I knew what way I could take. So of course, there are also more factors that are playing a key role in their decision to stay. And interestingly, of course, you have the policy rules that are key factors affecting their decision to stay. The 4-year rule, okay? This rule that is giving headaches to every settlement worker. And for those of you who are not aware of that, this is the 4-year limit on work permit and the subsequent 4-year out, right? So it says basically that you can stay in Canada for 4 years, and then you have to leave the country, and you cannot come back to Canada before 4 years have passed. This was created, interestingly, to highlight, when you see the governmental discourse, and also I talked to them, so they confirmed that it was created to highlight the temporary nature of the program. But actually, it had the very opposite effect, in the sense that it is actually convincing people, even though they had not planned to apply to PR, that they have to do that because they don't want to be out of the country for so many years. And we have seen that in so many instances. So it's also a huge source of stress for all migrant workers that we talk to. The 4-year rule is a very stressful thing for them. The Filipino worker, for example. So far, and I'm quoting here, I heard employers that do not process the papers. That's why some Filipinos will move out, because they want to process their papers. They will just give us work permits, so it's okay. But what if the ruling is already there? The 4-year maximum, so they have to go back. And their worry is that when they go back home, it will take another 4 years to come back to Canada. Because that's the policy, that's the rule. So I don't know. I mean, we are worried because there is no more security and stability on our state. It's really a lot of stress for us. For most low-skilled temporary foreign workers, two-step migration, as I said, is the only feasible option to immigrate to Canada. And so, of course, also the fact that they have not so many opportunities may be a reason why so many actually choose to apply to permanent residency as migrant workers. But also something that comes back not often is the financial, personal, and health security that Canada is offering, better life standards related to the country of origin, and very often something that is not a surprise to every migrant here, they want a better future for their children who is coming back. So Canada is also seen as a country of immigrants. Many of those workers say, well, it's a country of immigrants, tolerant, exempt of racism. That's something that is coming back in the reasons why they would like to get PR. And also the personal factors that are playing, of course, key roles. The persons they meet, including the employer. Some of them have been offered by the employer the opportunities to stay in current place of employment. And the province they work, for example, Ontario compared to Manitoba, it's a very different story. The settlement services they can access to, and so on and so forth. The only thing also that I think I'd like to highlight today is that the transition to PR is not an easy transition for every single migrant worker, be they skilled or low skilled. Applying to PR through existing streams is often described as tiring, troubling, exhausting for applicants, but none of them is really to be fun. This Chilean couple that I met, working as housekeepers, told me, in the middle of the process, you want to give up, in the middle of the process. At the same time, you say, I've been waiting so long for this, that to give it up is like wasting all this time because you have been giving and giving to the system. You have been giving your taxes and your work. You are in a position that no one wants to leave it. You have been doing this, and it's your way to help the government grow. When is the payback? You're going to leave when the payback is not coming. because you are just too tired? No way. Another skilled worker in Calgary told me, one thing I did not know was getting residency over here was so hard, it is basically. And the first one are working as housekeepers, but the second one is a skilled worker. So every single migrant worker, most of them actually, face similar challenges. They find that navigating the government websites, understanding the required forms while applying for PR is difficult, is often confusing. Be it Citizenship and Immigration Canada or provincial nominee programs. Clearly, the information available to applicants is lacking in transparency. The frequent changes by CIC and PNP policies and programs are frustrating and disheartening for migrant workers. And I mean all migrant workers, and I have here some examples that because I'm running out of time already, I won't use here, but I mean every single migrant worker is finding it difficult. Some migrant workers are unable to adjust quickly to find a new pathway to permanent residency, and in turn feel a sense of helplessness. Language requirement as well. Some of you know that they have changed lately, and so they have raised the bar for everyone, and that is an issue for many workers, including the skilled ones. One worker from Spain, working in Calgary as a line supervisor, told me, listening, writing, and reading comprehension and all that, and we speak pretty good English, but they want top-notch English. And I know people who are becoming citizens, their English is not that hard. So I really don't understand, to become resident, you have to have such a hard English than to become a citizen. And there are also what could be called more personal factors. For example, do you have a good or a bad employer? This is playing a huge role in your application. If you are a good employer, who are you willing to, basically? And there are good employers really willing to learn their work. If you are bad employers, that's a terrible story because it's really making it difficult. And in Alberta, for example, just to give you an idea, something that is very controversial, and I talked to Alberta Civil Service as well. If there is a discrepancy in Alberta between in your permanent residency application between the employment contract, what the employment contract says, and let's say your payroll, your application for permanent residency is just cancelled. So you are penalizing the employer. And I mean, I had a reason given by the civil service from Alberta, but the point that I'm trying to make is that, and interestingly, it's not so much the job itself that is an issue here for migrant workers. We have many migrant workers working at Maple Leaf in Manitoba. Very demanding job. I mean, physically speaking, very demanding. But very few complain because they told us, oh, we know what the conditions were. But we were given permanent residency at the end. So there was a deal, the deal was met, and that's it. But when the deal is broken, because the employer has permitted things that the employer can actually, that are not possible, and that you have to endure very difficult conditions, then this is when it's starting and to become a problem. Of course, also what I wrote here, family issues, many instances of family breakup, and something that and migrants are really divided about should they bring their family, should they leave them in their country. But the reality is that for so many of them, of course, it's making a lot of sense. It's very difficult, and it's creating many family separations among migrant workers. And also, of course, this idea of are you able to access some services in support of your application, how well do you speak English, etc. One last thing that I'd like to say is that I believe something to think maybe collectively, how workers are conceptualized in their communities can determine how well they transition and ultimately integrate. For example, in Manitoba, nearly every stakeholder, labor union, employer, service providers, government officials, perceive migrant workers as transitioners rather than temporary. This treatment has alleviated many challenges that workers might face that in other less migrant worker-friendly contexts. And in Fort McMurray, for example, the lack of settlement services or government assistance, no legal support of CIC office, and the weather and the remoteness of the Fort McMurray region makes it difficult to adjust to life in Canada. So what PR means for them, just to stop here, well, obtaining PR is most of the time described as a freedom for them. Of course, especially due to the nature of the employer treatment, it's streams and the employer type work permits, but also freedom to move, the right to passport, the right to travel, etc. And many former migrant workers spoke about how staying in Canada as a migrant worker, despite the many numerous challenges that they face, was first the opportunity of obtaining both PR and family reunification. As one previous migrant worker said, I will leave that for you now, I would say it is still worse. And I mean, he separated with his wife in between. I would say it's still worse because, you know what? You know you are doing this, not because of yourself, because it's a long-term plan for your children. So I would say go and encourage them. We were asking them if they had a suggestion for other migrant